All right. Who is your player of the week?
I don't think we need to. The other one. We need to
yeah. That's right. There was a second game this week. Okay.
Yes, we have to talk
let's talk about it. Okay. Manchester United today, as we record, a 2-3 defeat at the Emirates.
I feel like this game involves you flipping on the hood and embracing the dark side on this one.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Because I'm going to embrace my anger today. I'm just kidding. But well, this isn't. Well, there were moments where this was a get the bleep button ready show, but we'll talk about this. We're not going to go there. I'm going to try not to go there, but yeah, this one sucked. This was not fun. This was a very annoying way to spend my late morning.
Well, and like they say on Ted Lasso, it's the hope that kills you. It's like when we drew level, I was like, oh, okay, this is it. We're going to manage to get a point out of this. And then nope.
It wasn't even hope. It's just, we're better than them. That's the frustrating part. We talked about how great the Champions League is, right? And the differences between competitions. I mean, you saw from the off, right, what United was doing. And how they were playing, and I know we'll get into that in a moment, but it's just frustrating, to seem to continue to be able to. Every game we play in this, it seems like every time we play in the league at this point, we're facing teams. City does it, Liverpool does it. They come out, they sit in the block. I mean, you looked at United's formation today, right? They sat 9 guys clumped together in a box right around the center of the field, and then Luke Shaw was out wide, keeping an eye on Saka, which was largely a good idea. And every time it feels like we're close to breaking through, we just can't quite make it happen. And it is a frustrating thing to play. Arsenal gets a lot of criticism, and it's not entirely unfounded for playing slow, being deliberate, grinding it out, set pieces, rugby. Look at what we play every week. If that's what we're going to sit and do, what exactly? Where is the ability to be free flowing? And this isn't a criticism of United, by the way. Every team. This is how. I mean, you saw what you look. Inter's better than United. I know nobody wants to know. People are going to try to pretend that isn't the case after this result. But I'm sorry, Inter's better than United.
Yeah.
And you saw they approached us in very different ways. You saw what we did to them. I don't blame them for United for trying to sit back in a block. Yeah.
No, and it was actually interesting. What the commentators pointed out, I'd never really thought about before, was when we're slow and methodical and just hold on to the ball for long stretches, that increases the other team's frustration, and they go after us and foul us close to their 18-yard box so often. And that is another source for set pieces for us, which you saw with that Declan Rice free kick.
It can be, yeah. I mean, it depends. It's more of it's less of a frustration the more you're mentally prepared to go in and play that way. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, you could see it didn't look to me like United was getting particularly frustrated. Of course, there were a lot of fouls and some silly ones. It is, I because of the weather, I was not able to be at the pub. I watched this one at home, so I got a lot more of the broadcast than I usually do. Lee Dixon knows a lot about defending. Some of his opinions I take issue with, but certainly he talked a lot. He was very critical of a lot of the fouls that were being given away, just kind of like silly, unnecessary ones, like sort of not quite understanding your position. And it was, in a sense, a lot of those were targeting United players because we were still, by and large, had a lot of the possession. But overall, I thought they did so much well. It just feels like it should be more, especially given all the ways that the thing kind of fell apart on us, which we'll talk about the goals in a moment. But I mean, let's kind of look at it from the start.
Yeah.
Jesus got the start after, the 2 goals at Inter Milan. And I'm at the time I was kind of okay with it.
Yeah, going into the match, I could see why Arteta would have made that decision. Didn't disagree. But right, it didn't really materialize much.
And he had a few good moments. There was one, I think, in the second half. It wasn't the first half, where the ball came to him and he did like the most Brazilian thing possible. Like he popped it in the air over one defender, spun another. Like it was actually a neat little sequence. It just then, we had the cross just wound up getting, went to a United defender who booted it, 50 yards away.
Mm-hmm.
Like it ended up coming to nothing, but it was, yeah, we talked about sort of the expectations, what we want from him. He wasn't able to hold up the ball particularly well. And we kind of fell more into that it did feel a little bit more of the horseshoe pattern, heavily weighted, of course, to the right side with Bukayo Saka. It just, I know we don't want to do this, and I know this is it's a low percentage play, but I almost wonder if there's a value in this, in putting Mikel Merino up top and essentially hoofing crosses into the box.
Yeah.
I know we don't want to do that, and I get why that's not necessarily a good idea, but part of me feels like, just in the sense of trying something different, giving them something else to think about. Again, I think the Kai Havertz we've had, I think is this kind of, I know there's some dissent about Havertz in general, ignoring for a moment, obviously he's still coming back to strength and probably wasn't ready for a game like this. I know there's some conversation about Havertz. I feel like he plays that position in a way that Arteta wants, in a way that Gyökeres hasn't quite figured out, and maybe Jesus could have done, but I just don't feel like he quite does as well now in the aftermath of his injuries. Maybe that's overreading the moment, and maybe that's just overreading some of my frustrations. But big picture, I'm not upset with the season or anything like that. This is not a referendum on Mikel Arteta manager. But it is obviously frustrating to watch the game and watch sort of how we played, and feel like I understood why Jesus started, and I don't see why Gyökeres would have been necessarily a better option in that one. It feels like there's something. It just feels like if those are going to be our two options, we're kind of just we're doing the same thing and expecting different results. Is kind of what it feels like to me in that case.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying, and especially we kind of got used to having someone like Kai Havertz or Mikel Merino doing the same kind of thing that Havertz was doing, and that does work well for our team. And did we maybe go looking for Gyökeres and so eagerly readopt Jesus in that same pattern just because of the public discourse around it? Do you think that affected Arteta in wanting to try and put a number 9 up front like that?
No, I think with Gyökeres, I think there's two different things. I think with Gyökeres, it's an adaptation process, both him adapting to Arsenal, but Arsenal also adapting to him. He isn't Kai Havertz. He doesn't play that way. Those aren't his strengths. You don't want him to fill that role. But I do think that hasn't quite connected as well as we might like. Who knows? He might have a season next year where he comes good and hits 15, 20 goals, and we're happy. He just hasn't quite been able to work that out. We've talked a little bit about maybe he's been overplayed a little bit given Havertz's injury, Jesus' injury. I think with Jesus, it's a little more, because I remember when he came in, and it wasn't just he was a physical monster. Like, he could bully defenders, including guys who were quite a bit taller than he was. Had a physicality about him that I feel like he doesn't quite have, and I wonder if some of that is the residuals of the injuries he had. Like it's it isn't a video game where he's recovered and he comes back and it's like he was never gone. I do think there's still an element of kind of regaining his strength and I talk about his age. I'm pretty sure he's in his late 20s. We're not dealing with an old player per se, but I do think whatever it was he was when we first signed him, before all the injuries started to hit, he is not that player at the moment. So I think a fuller strength Jesus does more of the Havertz role. I think he fits that a little better. I think at the moment, it's just not quite firing in the league. Again, we're just coming off a game where they both scored. They combined for 3 goals. Jesus has had a couple of goals over the last couple of weeks. So I don't want to jump into a crisis evaluation, but I do think it's fair to say that something isn't quite working there. And how much of that too is, Timber playing on the left, and how much do we miss Calafiori there? How much of that is, Odegaard not having a particularly good game today, and his replacement Eze not having a particularly good game today? How much of it is Zubimendi maybe running out of gas a little bit because he's played constantly.
Yeah, he has. Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of things. I know we focus a lot on the striker and the center forward, and of course, we talked about it in the summer. But maybe that, to me, that's just a part of this.
Yeah. So that's overall your analysis of what's gone wrong today.
Yeah, a bit of a that was one set of things that went wrong today. In terms of the offense, our ability to score, in terms of our ability to score. I mean, we did generate a goal. I know it's an own goal. Off Lisandro Martinez, which it took 5 or 6 replays, but I finally did see it. Oh yeah, that's the right call.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a great set of plays. Saka, it was a really good idea actually in terms of finding ways to get Saka space, which was instead of rolling the ball on the ground the way we always do, they try to they did the cross field diagonal, which put him into space in a way he was able to get to Odegaard, slotted it into Timber.
Yep.
And I bundled in off Martinez, but I think if Martinez doesn't get that, Timber does, and I think we are still talking about a goal.
It's exactly like that Jesus header from a few weeks back when he first came back, and it was
the Wolves game.
Yeah, it was very clearly like, okay, if that guy isn't there, Jesus just heads that in unencumbered. So
yeah.
Same thing with Timber here.
Yeah, and again, I think honestly, again, some of this is results oriented criticism. Because honestly, we bossed this game, for the first 20, 30 minutes. I mean, United didn't even have a shot, much less a shot on goal. We weren't generating shots on goal, but we were there. I mean, there's a scenario where that goal is sort of the beginning of the Python squeeze. You could hear a little singing 1-0 to the Arsenal, and that's when the squeeze.
I said it out loud.
and then, but then something cracks, and it's 2-0, and all of a sudden it starts to snowball for them from there.
Yeah,
that is not what happened. That is not how this played out, is it?
No, it was more excruciating than a Python squeeze.
Well, it was. It just was the wrong direction.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, so they came back. It was what they said, 7 minutes 58 seconds or something.
It was quick. It was quicker than it should have
been. So we're talking, of course, about Zubimendi kind of gifting them the ball, not too dissimilarly to how Gabriel did when he first came back from injury a few weeks back. What happened there? What was Zubimendi trying to accomplish?
I think, and at the moment, obviously, Zubimendi, because it is easy to watch the play as it goes on and think, Zubimendi, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I think, and I saw some of this, some post-game commentary, reading it, and some follow-up comments as well lead me to believe, I wish I could remember where I saw it, but lead me to believe that there's something to this. I don't think Zubimendi's actually the villain on this one. I think it's William Saliba. Because what you see there is Saliba making the pass to put Zubimendi in an awkward position. Like, he doesn't receive the ball particularly well, and he's already under pressure, which is something Saliba kind of needs to recognize and see.
True,
I saw the term, you'll hear it in American football, it's a hospital ball. As in, you throw the ball in a place where the guy is in a position where he's likely to get popped and wind up in the hospital. It's a dangerous pass.
Yeah.
When really what Saliba needs to do in that instance is probably just, whack it upfield. Because they're being pressed. Both he and Zubimendi were being pressed. Maybe you could talk about, I've seen people talk about Odegaard maybe should be tracking back as well a little bit better. That, give it more outlets. That's fair. But really Saliba puts Zubimendi in a horrible place. And I think Zubimendi kind of goes with the reflex, which is slide the ball back into the center where it should be Saliba or probably Raya. But of course, neither of them are there, right? And it's instead just Mbeumo. And credit to Mbeumo, that's, that happens so quickly, and he's getting the ball there. I mean, and he's facing down Raya and Gabriel charging in at him in that moment, and is kind of, coolly puts it away. But yeah, just a brain fart of a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And, a game that we have largely been in control of is suddenly 1-1, and you're giving life to a team that you just can't afford to do. But having said that, it's halftime. It's 1-1. Really shouldn't be 1-1. I think you still feel pretty good overall about what we should be able to do. And we've seen this a few times this season where we've put in kind of a mediocre first half. We get an opportunity in the second half. We come out and have been much stronger and are able to turn the game around in our favor.
Especially at home.
And that didn't happen this one, did it?
No, we came out defeated, it seemed like. I don't know.
Or at least not defeated. We didn't play very well. I mean, let me just say this. I think the real pivot point in the game is Dorgu's goal. Because I think it was early enough in the second half that like we hadn't done anything. So like nothing had really happened at that, like in the half at least, nothing had really happened. And all of a sudden they got the ball, they had a loose ball there in the middle, Dorgu and Bruno Fernandes get a little back and forth. And it's an incredible finish from Dorgu. One he may never do again in his life, but credit to him. He does. It's a good finish. And somewhat a bit out of nowhere, it's 2-1 against, and that's suddenly when it felt like, I don't know. I know we don't exactly have the most robust home crowd. I know they're up for some big games and they're up for some good moments, but I know the Emirates is not exactly is it a wall of sound from kickoff to final whistle every single game? It felt very nervous listening. Like the listening part felt very nervous.
Yeah. Too bad nothing rhymes with Emirates quite the same as the Highbury Library.
It's probably better nothing does.
But yeah.
But yeah, it felt very nervous. It felt like there was a lot of nervous energy. I mean, the United fans made a bunch of noise when they scored, but honestly, it's not as if they were, some sort of overwhelming presence. I mean, think about some of the European crowds, the traveling European crowds
right.
we've seen. Those guys bring it. And our away fans have had plenty of good showings this season. But it felt nervy, and understandably, I mean, being down at that point, and we should be able to come back, and yet you could tell things weren't quite right. Because you saw, and I've been racking my brain to think if I've ever seen this before. I'm sure it has happened a bunch. I've just never seen it. Although I shouldn't say a bunch, because the 5 sub rules have only been around for since COVID. We saw a 4-man substitution in the 57th minute.
I'm pretty
crazy.
confident I've never seen it before. I mean, you see the triple sub pretty frequently, but a quad, I mean, there's a reason that you don't see it. I mean, I'm imagining most of the time you want to leave at least a couple subs for later in the match, just in case there's an injury, and then to give you one more chance to kind of bring in a tactical sub like we ended up doing with Madueke later. But it leaves you exposed more if someone gets hurt too. Then you have limited options.
Yeah, that's a philosophical kind of conversation about how different managers handle subs. Do they like keeping one in their pocket? I think the 5 subs has really changed a lot of that calculus in ways that it's not just about who you bring on, but sometimes who you don't bring on for various reasons. It was interesting. I think you could almost treat them. I think you could sort of treat them a little bit. Well, I shouldn't say all a little bit differently. One of them, so Ben White came on for Piero Hincapié, which I'm not going to say that was planned, but I think this is the first time we've seen Hincapié in a couple of games. I think maybe that was he's gone 60 minutes, and I didn't think he was particularly great. I thought he had some struggles here and there. I think that was kind of a case of let's get him off. Otherwise, I think looking at the rest, Jesus, Odegaard, and Zubimendi came off for Gyökeres, Eza, and Marino. I mean, I think it's fair to say that those 3 coming off, we talked a little bit about Jesus. I didn't think Odegaard was particularly effective today. I mean, we talked about Zubimendi's mistake. I think he's kind of looking a little ragged in general. I think in a lot of ways think about it, you're basically swapping out half your lineup.
Just about. And, you wonder when he does that, is that signaling to the rest of the players who stay on that they should be panicking a little bit? Like, does that possibly make things worse?
Yeah, that is the interesting part of it, is the psychological side, and you never really know. I mean, I'm sure Arteta obviously knows these guys a lot better than we ever will. I'm sure he has a pretty good sense of their psychology and things they react positively, negatively to. I mean, sometimes you have to change things up. Sometimes you have to be able to light a fire under guys, and sometimes you just have to swap people out and say, "Look, this isn't working." Um, typically, a sub about an hour in, it's fair to say that it's not working, and you need to really make some changes and do a few things differently. I think the frustrating part about that was, other than Marino, who I thought was pretty good in his time, I didn't think Ezra really did anything. I didn't think Gyökeres really did anything. Even Ben White, which really ended up switching, Timber over to the left side.
Right.
I didn't think that necessarily. Ben White maybe had some good moments with Saka, but I don't.
At least Marino made a difference.
Yeah, it's one of those that just felt like they didn't quite work. And then same thing a little bit later, Madueke for Trossard in the final sub. I don't think Madueke is good. That's not going on his highlight reel.
No.
This one isn't a performance that he's going to want to remember.
It was interesting that he chose Madueke instead of Martinelli to come on. I was wondering with that, do you think it's kind of the reason that I had picked Madueke as player of the week a couple weeks back, where he's just able to break into the box in different ways than other players are? Do you think that was part of it, or what do you think was the thinking there?
I do think there was a little bit of a chaos agent element to it, like an attempt to create or do something. Because especially at the stage he came in, it was still 2-1, and they're trying to get back in it. We aren't really generating a lot of opportunities. The closest thing we had was right before that, right before the quad sub, where that corner nearly goes in.
Right,
it obviously didn't. Yeah, I think, I think too, maybe Trossard was tiring a little bit. He had some good moments. He also had some kind of weirdly ineffective ones as well. Like, I don't think you can walk out of this game and say, well, so and so can hold their head high here. I think everyone had some moments that they really want back. And it is interesting to read, because in the moment I didn't love the quad sub as much as I didn't like the way we were playing. To me, sitting here at home, it said, this feels like we're panicking. But maybe we should have panicked. We weren't playing particularly well. We were trailing to a team we probably shouldn't have been. Maybe that was an opportunity to be more proactive. And that of course has been the longtime criticism of Arteta, right? Not using his subs, holding off until too late. You can't say that today, that's for sure.
No. To quote Toy Story, this is the perfect time to panic. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, this game kind of ranks up there alongside Wolves as in the running for worst performance of a season so far. How do you feel about it between those two? Where do you think we were better or worse?
I think let's give some credit to Manchester United, is much better than Wolves. I think that sort of goes. Obviously the result of Wolves. Which, by the way, we should mention the final 2 goals. Marino bundles it in over the line.
Yeah.
Across the goal line absolutely counts.
Well, yeah, the defender was standing inside the goal when he cleared it. It's Well,
to be fair, that was Sesko, who is a forward, not a defender. So, but yes, yeah. That's one of those. You are not supposed to be. That's why you don't stand in the goal, because when you hit it, it's too late.
Right.
And then, of course, just minutes later, the ultimate gut punch there. In a sense, you sort of feel a bit like Wolves did in that game, where they get the goal to tie and then suddenly give up the winner. It's a nice finish from Cunha, but he just gets way too much space. This is poorly handled by us. Again, there was nothing terribly shocking about what United was doing. It was the exact same thing they did against City last week. It was the same thing we kind of all knew. They were going to sit back, defend, and try to beat us on the counter. And they created a couple chances on the counter, but that was really Dorgu and Cunha there were kind of those opportunities. Even Cunha is a pretty nice finish. I hesitate to go worst performance of the season. It certainly feels the worst. Even the I'm thinking we've lost 3 games this season. I don't mean in the league. I mean, period. We've lost 3 games, and they all sort of feel differently. Liverpool was, they're all kind of gut punches in their own way, right? Liverpool was a gut punch. This was a game I think we feel like we probably should have drawn 0-0. Like it took a ridiculous free kick to get the goal, and credit to it was Zoboslai. Okay,
yeah.
The Villa one, that winner came so late. It was you're still just like processing what's happening.
Right.
This one, this was at home. Certainly in terms of the losses, this was definitely the most frustrating. This was at home.
It was also the whiplash of drawing even, and then I think this is the one where I said it was 2 minutes and 58 seconds later was when he scored.
Right. And obviously we're far removed from sort of the titanic battles of Ferguson and Wenger and those days when it was Arsenal and United at the top of the league. We're a long way from that in a lot of respects. But there is something about, losing to these guys. Ugh, just...
Well, this group of players does seem particularly dislikable too.
They're. I'm not particularly. I've made my feelings about Bruno Fernandes fear known on the show. We're not going to talk about Bruno today. Who, by the way, was rather. I guess we are going to talk about him. Who was rather anonymous, I think, for most of the game.
Yeah.
Except, of course, on those instances where he's whining for foul calls that have already been given.
Or slamming the ball into a teammate's face. Yeah.
Yeah, although, to be fair, that was an accident.
Sure, but...
Yeah. Again, kind of a weird one. They were all screaming for a stoppage of play, and I'm a little surprised they didn't. A ball hit him in the face. That's a head injury. I really don't know. That was an odd one to me, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, United does that thing where they're plenty of pushing and tugging on Saka. Plenty, Lisandro Martinez may or may not have slapped Jesus in the back of the head at one point.
It looked like he had a chokehold on Gyökeres at one point. His arm was wrapped around his neck.
Yeah, and United players I thought going down a little easy at points. But hey, I don't. I'm not actually going to talk about the refereeing here because I don't think that was a determinative in this game. That was mostly just me airing my frustrations about playing United. I don't know. I think it was the worst performance given the circumstances. Especially coming off the Inter game where you feel so good and our performance is so strong against a much better team. And then to come here and do that, to lay an egg at home. I guess this is a random point of comparison, but in my head, I was sort of tossing it over. So obviously, I follow lots of teams, lots of sports. One of them, the New York Islanders hockey team, recently were on the West Coast road trip. They played Edmonton and Calgary and Vancouver and Seattle. They played a bunch of games out west. And they were gone for 2 weeks. And they finished earlier in the week, and they came home Saturday. They played their first home game after 2 weeks away. And it was a stinker. They lost 5-0. It was just a terrible game. And they talked about that even coming in, that was something they wanted to guard against. That they didn't want to have a letdown after the road trip and come back, even though they're obviously very tired from all the travel and stuff. And then, of course, that's exactly what they did. Now, Arsenal, the road trip we're talking about, the away games. It was, there and back there. And, what was it? Portsmouth and home, Chelsea home, Nottingham home, Milan home. It wasn't as if Arsenal was on the road for 2 weeks.
Right.
These 2 weeks. But I always wonder.
It's still a lot of travel over that time. Yeah.
It's a lot of travel. Yeah. United didn't play a midweek game because they were eliminated from, they didn't qualify for Europe and have been eliminated from every other competition so far. I don't know. It wasn't a great performance, but I'll say this as we get towards the table talk segment. I don't want to read any of this as a referendum on Arteta and our style. And I think it was a bad day. I think we just had a bad day, and
yeah,
it feels like we're having a few too many of those. And I kind of wonder. I would love to be 20 years in the future and have Arteta, have them do the documentary on this season and hear what they say 20 years later. Oh man, we were freaking out, everything was fine. We were just unlucky, or man, we were freaking out at this point. They won't say anything now, of course, but I'm kind of curious 20 years later what they say.
you're implying with the perspective that we go on to win like the quad and do that for like the next 2 or 3 years, and that we look back at this and laugh.
I didn't say I did not say that. I did not say any such thing. We don't tempt fate on this show. I did not say that. But I mean, just the idea, maybe when Arteta writes his memoirs or Bukayo Saka writes his when these guys come out with their stories years later and they talk about this something this season or these kind of moments where we treat them one way. Because it always, to me, I'm convinced. I'm not convinced. I know it looks different to them on the inside than it does to us on the outside.
Right.
And you always wonder, what is it I don't see? What am I missing? What do I not understand? That I'm never going to understand because I'm not there with them,